Hi, welcome to our video. My name is Quentin,
I'm Connor.
and we're going to demonstrate how Coca-Cola and Adidas used analytics and operations market research to produce their companies to the full potential. Our first video here is going to be about what analytics and operations research is.
What is compassionate? What is imaginative? What is human? What are all of those things? Operations research and analytics. They offer limitless possibilities for us to tackle challenges, great and small, to innovate in ways that once upon a time were fiction and fantasy. But this is not the stuff of wild imaginations or distant, far-off ideas. They're proven scientific and mathematical processes, studying and analyzing complex systems, turning data into information, transforming information into insights, yielding new ideas and inspiring actions that save lives, save money, and solve problems. Operations research and analytics fuel our passion to explore, to forge new solutions to timeless puzzles, propel us toward a finish line we'll never see, and spark our determination to give our children a better world and a brighter future. What is compassionate? What is imaginative? What is resoundingly human? Operations research and analytics.
The second video is over Coca-Cola, and in this video they'll go over the analytics and operations research of the company. They also go over the use of Hivery to more efficiently and effectively stock vending machines. And lastly, they go over the relationships they have with other companies globally.
Let me just tell you what Coca-Cola Founders is. Coca-Cola Founders is a platform where we start at pre-seed and work with founders around the world to co-create startups. And I'll talk a lot more about that. But before I do, let me ask you a quick question. How many people have kids in the room? Kids, yeah. So last week I took my kids, I've got 3 daughters, took them to Disney World in Florida. And it was all fun. If you've ever done that, or Disneyland, it's fun. But that place is a germ factory. So unfortunately I've got a cold and a froggy voice, so I apologize for that in advance. Okay, let's get into it. Actually, before I get into Coca-Cola Founders, I thought it might be interesting to give you the 2-minute version of the Coca-Cola founder story, because I don't think many people know it. And being a part of a company that's over 100 years old, we don't talk about it a whole lot, but it might be interesting, especially for the founders in the room. Okay, first of all, no, this is not a hipster from Berlin. This is John Pemberton. John Pemberton was the original founder of the Coca-Cola Company in 1886. And 1886, this is 20 years after the Civil War in this country. The country was rebuilding itself. And Pemberton was able to create a product, a drink that didn't taste like anything else. And at the time, there weren't many non-alcoholic drinks. So coffee, tea, water, lemonade, root beer, that kind of thing. So he was able to create something that filled the need, a gap. But his business model was very complex. In fact, the way it was designed was he, mixed his concentrate, his liquid, with that guy's water and dispense that product out of his machine to his customer. Very complicated, so John didn't have direct access to the customer, and very difficult. So, in fact, so difficult that John sold the company a year after he started it to this guy, Asa Candler. Now, Asa is the guy who basically designed the company, or the brand at least that you know of, called Coca-Cola. Asa was the guy who actually developed a new business model where he worked directly with independent bottlers, like a platform model, to put Coke in a bottle, which was actually harder than it sounds. But anyway, he did this, back turn of last century. So, and he also developed many of the iconic things that you think of when you think of Coke. The iconic curvy, what we call the contour bottle, the color red, the Spencerian script associated with the brand, and my favorite actually is the price. For Coca-Cola, they sold one product in one package for one price for almost 70 years, a nickel. So think about how simplified your marketing, your operations can be around that. But anyway, that was Asa Candler. Asa sold the company in 1923 to this guy, Robert Woodruff. Now, Woodruff Woodruff was an amazing businessman, but he didn't smile very often. It's true, it's very difficult to find a picture of him smiling, believe me. Anyway, so Woodruff was the guy who actually took Coke global. And by 1930, we were in 30 countries, including China. That's a picture of Beijing down below. But he was the guy that made the deal with the Olympics, first brand to partner with the Olympics, again, to go global. And he was the guy that really standardized and integrated all the pieces of the business together to scale. So you fast forward to today, fast forward $20 billion brands in the portfolio. And that's revenue, not valuation, by the way, but $20 billion brands. Most people are familiar with Coke and Diet Coke, Fanta, Sprite. But we have billion-dollar tea brands, water brands, coffee brands, so forth. 200 countries. Actually, we're local, or the company's local in 207 countries. And I'll save a question for the Q&A. The only country that we're not in is in North Korea. So 208 countries, we're at 207. So anyway, 3,500 products in the portfolio, 700,000 people in what we call the Coca-Cola system. Coca-Cola system is actually a mashup of about 300 companies that form this thing that we call Coca-Cola. Super complicated. 24 million customers. 24 million customers. So when you go to buy a product from our company, you don't go to the Coke store, right? You buy it through a retailer. You go to the guy across the street there or down the road, and that's a customer of Coke. But they range from that guy over there to Walmart. That's the size and scale of the customers that we have. But we have 24 million customers. And then the big number, almost 2 billion people drink something from our company every day. So 2 billion servings a day is what we do. So massive scale. So what do you do with that in light of this? And actually, I don't really love the last two words there, digital transformation, because no one knows exactly what that means. But it's true that there are new business models, new technologies that we would love to adapt inside of our company, but it's very difficult. It's very difficult when you've designed a company, over a 100-year-old company, to adopt certain technologies and certain things inside of that. So, what do you do with that? CB Insights. We love CB Insights, super fans. This is one of their visuals. I'm sure you saw it, but we don't. Our industry is not alone. Every industry is experiencing this, especially for legacy companies. This is FedEx. It's hard to see. It's a kind of a complex slide, but this is FedEx's homepage, and these are all the startups that are disrupting their, basically their value proposition, all around their business model. So when you look at that, it's tempting to think, well, FedEx just doesn't get it, right? They just don't get it. They're too slow, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of reasons for that, but I think it really comes down to two, especially in our case, in Coke's case. I'll speak for Coke. The first one is this. It's a great quote. Actually, one of the speakers spoke earlier today and brought this up. But Warren Buffett, in business, I look for economic castles protected by unbreachable moats. Moats, right? So, he looks, as an investor, he looks for companies that have moats built around their competitive advantage. Competitive advantages built around the company so that they can protect them and see them through times of change. So it kind of looks like this from a visual standpoint. Like there's the company, and then we have this brand equity that surrounds our company. We have legal processes and systems that protect that company, tax, HR, all these things that protect the company, again, that was built over 100 years ago. So structurally speaking, it's very difficult to get inside of that, across those moats and inside that castle if you're especially an early stage startup, right? But I think maybe the bigger challenge is cultural. And I love this slide. Because it really illustrates. So we talk about, especially in this kind of context, we talk about the startup ecosystem. We're all very familiar with how it works. You go to Sand Hill Road, there's a sort of a language and a cadence, a rhythm. So if you're in the startup ecosystem, imagine that you're under the sea, right? You're in the ocean-based ecosystem. And there are fish and coral and water and all that stuff, and you're sort of used to that ecosystem. Well, what you may not recognize is that big companies like Coke or other big Fortune 100 companies have their own ecosystems, and as it turns out, they're very different. So we have our own ecosystems of suppliers, of customers, employees. Remember, we have 700,000 employees. We have over 1,000 factories. All these things that form our ecosystem. So, a couple years ago, we were asked by senior management to develop a platform so that we could work with founders, early stage startups, somehow. How could we do that? So, like us, most big companies are sort of looking at one of three models, or maybe all of the models. We looked at everything. But these are the models. So, should we acquire companies? Should we acquire early stage or proven companies and bring them into our company to help us adopt. Now, as you know, I'll speak as a non-tech company. Maybe that's better. It's easier for a tech company, but for Coke, that's super difficult. So remember the slide. I'm gonna go back. So we're in the desert and we're going to acquire some fish. What do we do with the fish in the desert? So that's why some of these don't, work out, especially acqui-hires, because it's a completely different ecosystem that you're bringing them into. And then accelerator. Almost every big company has tried or has an accelerator going. And I'm not knocking accelerators, but accelerators are sort of like speed dating. And inside of a big company, you don't have. It takes time to develop the relationships, prove out that the value is there on both sides. And most accelerators just don't give you the time it takes to do this inside. And again, on the cultural side of things, what do we know about, go back, what is someone in here, how are they going to advise a fish, right, or advise coral, or you can imagine they say, well, what is water? All these things that are sort of natural for this ecosystem just don't translate across, right? And then act like. There's this whole industry built around consulting firms going into big companies like Coke and helping them to be more entrepreneurial. And again, not knocking that, but from our experience, those are great, but the incentives are misaligned, right? So our employees are incented to work in this world, whatever the desert world, not work in the fish world. So it's just very difficult to make that happen. So we designed, again, a couple years ago, over 2 years ago, we just started designing a model. We didn't even know what to call it. We didn't call it pre-seed. We didn't call it anything. We just started calling it Coca-Cola Founders. And we've iterated many, many times. We've made lots of mistakes. But let me just walk you through how it works. First of all, we thought oftentimes big companies, big corporates, VCs often don't like, or they advise actually their portfolio companies not to get involved with a corporate too early on because they can really mess it up. Totally agree, totally understand that. But we thought, what if that wasn't the case, at least in terms of Coke? What if we could start very early, pre-seed, maybe right after the MVP or, where there's a sort of shared passion around a common problem. What if we could start very early and partner, and actually co-create? So not try to dominate, not try to, create a win-lose situation with anybody, a VC or founder, but what if we could actually co-create together from the very start? And that's where we started. So the model is based on really two things, starting off on a big industry problem. So not only a problem that Coke has, but an industry problem. And think about it, our value chain, our supply chain is so vast, we cut across multiple industries. So we see big challenges, big billion-dollar markets, if you want to call it a market, or a big billion-dollar challenge inside of many verticals. So we start there, start with a big, we call it a Coke challenge, but really an industry challenge. And and you mentioned it, but from a founder standpoint, this is a chance to get not only pre-seed, seed money, and we talked one of the speakers here this morning talked about how difficult it still is to raise pre-seed. If we could take care of that, so we offer pre-seed, a big challenge, a known market, one that we feel every day, and we can go deep into that pain and really expose what that pain's like to co-create a solution with the founders. So let me just give you an example. I've got 3 examples. The first one, actually, the first set of founders that we worked with was actually based in the Bay Area, San Francisco, and this is the challenge that they focus on. We call it out of stocks. It's very easy to understand. If our product isn't on the shelf, the consumer can't buy it, the retailer can't sell it, there's no value exchange, right? And if you think about all the shelves that we have our products on, that's $1 billion, actually more than $1 billion challenge for us in lost revenue. But again, think about it. Every CPG company, suffers from this or feels this kind of pain, shark bite kind of pain. So the way it works is if there's an empty shelf, that retailer calls Coke or whoever, but in our case, Coke. We send one of our guys out to take our products from the back room, from the warehouse or back of the office up to the front and restock the shelf. The challenge with that is there's no on-demand model for that. So we may get the call on Tuesday, but we don't arrive until Thursday just because that's our route to market. Big challenge. Another one is, again, we have a lot of shelves around the world. We monitor how our products are merchandised or displayed around the world, but we can only do a small sample. Again, think about it, how many shelves we're on. So we hire agencies to help us gain insight into, through these small samples to extrapolate how we're doing in the market. So this startup, they're called Winolo. Has anybody ever heard of Winolo? Just raise a Series A. Wow, gosh. Founders, we'd love to hear that. So anyway, they started Winolo based on this problem, this big Coke challenge. and essentially, the challenge around how to staff, on-demand staffing model to do these types of jobs, right? Very unpredictable, on-demand types of jobs. And you can read the numbers there, but we're able to do, just in that last example, we're able to do much more than we could do through our sort of typical way of working with an agency. And really what we look for is, obviously, for revenue, additional revenue, and or productivity savings. And so that's Wanola. Now, one of the things that we can do, we found out quite easily, is that we can operate at scale, at global scale. 3/4 or at least half of our revenues come from outside the U.S. So we can actually do this and work directly with the startup communities around the world. That's why we love Startup Grind. To do this same kind of thing outside the Valley, certainly outside the U.S. This is a great example. We partnered with a couple of founders based in Sydney. The challenge that they focused on was our vending business. And when everyone knows of Coke vending machines, when we started that business decades ago, there wasn't a convenience store or a coffee shop on every corner. So having a vending machine, on different corners around the world made sense. Well, today it's not so much, right? So essentially, our vending business is flat. And so what these founders looked at was actually the data that we collect around that vending business. Now, Coke is a beverage company, right? We don't have data scientists on staff. I probably wouldn't even know what to do with the data scientists if we did. So anyway, so what they did is they actually brought on a couple of data scientists and developed a predictive analytics product to help our vending business. And again, keep in mind that this helps our problem, but there are many other companies that serve products through vending machines as well. So the way it works, though, is that our vending machines, once there's vending machine is out of product, one of our guys from the company comes out and puts product in the machine, right? And the way they do it is they have what we call a planogram, right? Just a plan to show how to stock the machine. That's not a machine, but anyway, it gives you an idea how to stock the machine. So what they thought is, what if they could take historical data, real-time data, mash it up, and come up with customized planograms for each machine? And that's what they did. It's called Hivery. The company is called Hivery. And you can see that they launched not even a year ago, and they're scaling quite quickly throughout our company. In fact, we were in Tokyo 2 weeks ago and helping them talk to our bottlers there. So last one, Southeast Asia, or more specifically Vietnam. Again, we were just there 2 weeks ago, but half of the market in Vietnam, I'd say Southeast Asia, but specifically Vietnam, is run by these people. Who are these people? These are wholesalers. So half the market is run by wholesalers. So what we do is we sell our product at wholesale to like that guy who stocks the product and then sells it however he wants to after that. We have no insight, no connection to his end retailers or customers, right? We just drop the product and he sells it. Now, we'd like to have that insight. We'd like to know how our products are selling against other competitors and so forth, but we don't. That's just how it works. So we worked with a couple founders who launched a product in actually November. Sorry, let me go back. Part of the challenge with that is that in Southeast Asia, a lot of these wholesalers are still on sort of old school legacy systems. In other words, they use pencil and paper to track their inventory. Super inefficient, right? But 4G has just come on them. So the founders that we started working with wanted to help solve that problem or help them track their inventory in a more efficient way. So they developed a desktop version of software, think Salesforce kind of thing, but a way to manage their inventory, help them manage their inventory digitally, let's say. They also developed an app for the wholesalers in customer, their outlets or their other wholesalers, to order product through the app in real time. This is, I know it sounds maybe I don't know, mundane in this country, but this is light years ahead of most other people in that market. And so what they've done, the company is called S3. What they've done, we talked to one of the wholesalers, and she told us that just using this software, just using that app, has doubled her business in less than a month. And anyway, so they're growing like crazy. This gives us, the company, insight in the data. We had never had any insight into or access to the data or insight into what happened to our products or customers beyond that wholesaler. So again, this is something that would be super difficult for us to develop internally, almost impossible. But through this platform, we're able to do this with the founders. Okay, so we launched this about 2 years ago. Through this platform, we've launched 12 companies in 10 countries. But again, the real win-win here is that we're able to do things that would be very difficult or almost impossible for us to do internally. The the founders get access to a first customer, big, enterprise customer, and pre-seed from day one. Now, this is the end of the deck, but what I think is super interesting is how big this could be. And I don't mean for Coke, but think about all the non-tech companies that could, leverage this kind of a platform. And now imagine if they could get together somehow and access, their overlapping challenges, problems, and work this way on a similar type of platform. We thought the same thing. So about 3 or 4 months ago, we approached one of our biggest customers, Walmart, and asked them if they'd, want to collaborate on this type of platform. And we're doing that with them now. So I don't know, when we think big, we think global, and we think about these big sort of non-tech companies coming together to leverage this type of platform. So with that, I'll move to Q&A if anybody has any questions. But thank you.
And our third video is going to be over Adidas and how they came back from having a poor marketing status with Nike and how they're becoming another lead competitor in the market.
So Adidas now seeks 11% operating profit by 2020. How much will you spend in the US to counter your biggest rival?
It's clear this is not a U.S.-only, battle. This is a global battle for, the top of the sporting market, and we're very well positioned. We had a fantastic 2016 and, delivered $1 billion profit, and our plan is to deliver $2 billion profit in 2020. So it's a battle all over the place, and it's not only a battle against our key competitor in the U.S., which is Nike. It's about creating the right products for the right sports athletes in the right places. So we're quite comfortable and confident that we can get to where we want to get, but it's not one battle against one competitor. I think that would be, making the market a bit more simple than it is.
Yeah, that's a very fair comment. Casper, will Donald Trump's politics make it harder to sell in the U.S.?
No, I'm not so concerned about the policy of the current president of the U.S., because if any import taxes would come, it will hit the entire industry. The sporting industry is characterized by having 80% of all products being manufactured in Asia. We have some very small local manufacturing in the U.S., but nobody will be able to circumvent that. So that will be a challenge that will hit the entire industry. So I can't really imagine that a president will start attacking an industry that really makes people more healthy. So that is not one of my main concerns at this stage.
I want to congratulate you on the massive recovery of your company in the last few years. Bring up the chart right now. And this is Nike versus Adidas. And I understand that there's different players here. Under Armour, grim outlook given the Trump support of his CEO. Here's the moonshot known as Nike. Here's the failure of Adidas. And wow, what a turnaround in the last number of years. How does cool factor into this? I mean, it is about the kids going in the store and they want to be cool. What are you going to do about cool after you see how Under Armour has stumbled and after Nike just keeps doing it every day? What's your secret sauce?
No, the secret sauce is creating the right product at the right place in the world for the right consumers. And so there is no one single source. In the U.S., we have a great creation center. In North America, in Portland, here in Herzogenaurach, in Bavaria, we have a fantastic creation center. And then we have aligned with some of the best artists in the world that will help also create the cool factor. Whether it's a Kanye West coming out of LA, or whether it's, the top basketball players or football players, Leo Messi, from a soccer standpoint. So it's getting the right creators that help put the right spin to the products, so the kids feel attracted to our products in the store, but also engaging with the kids through digital devices.
Help me here. Stan Smith is 70 years old. That's your cool factor. Kate Moore of BlackRock sitting next to me, sir. She has 14 pair of Stan Smith sneakers in her closet. I think it's a great untold story. How did you do this? How is your cool factor the reinvention of a 70-year-old?
So Stan Smith is an icon. He's absolutely fantastic and has been a great, great partner to our company. And over time, we've evolved the product we have, the marketing we have with him, and also changed the product to make it more contemporary, but never really taken away from its origin. And we have a fantastic relationship with Stan Smith, and he was here in the summer, and I can tell you all the kids on our campus was running around him, and they even got on the tennis court and got a couple of autographs. Great partner. So it's not only the Kanye West, but it is the Stan Smiths of this world that helps us, really be the creator in the sporting world.
Francine, I can't convey in the United States the impact of this. A tennis player, full disclosure, I saw him a million years ago. He's 70 years old, Francine, and he's cooler than Beckham or any of the others.
Yeah, I know, Tom. I know Stan Smith. I've been wearing them for years, and I know Yeah, exactly. And I know Tom King probably secretly has a pair as well. But actually, talk to me, Casper, about something which is not as cool as Stan Smith, Reebok. How is that turnaround shaping up? And actually, you said it may take 4 years to turn it back. That seems like a very long time.
So let me be clear, we are a performance-driven organization, and we have expectations to all our legal entities, countries, but also brands. Clearly, Reebok did not perform up to our level of expectation. We've made a number of changes in the fall of last year. We put a turnaround in place. We're looking upon it every quarter. We've got to turn around the business in a sustainable way and not squeeze it to a short-term position. We're convinced we can get Reebok where we want. But I do want to stress one thing. We've seen very strong growth outside the U.S. for a very long period of time. Last year, we grew Reebok's business 6%, and all of the growth came outside the U.S. Most of it was double-digit. So I'm convinced we'll turn around, but I think you got to do things correct, and sometimes it takes longer than you really want.
All right, Casper, why have you been unable to sell your golf unit?
Who says we have not been unable to sell a golf business? We put the golf business on the market because we don't believe it really belongs strategically to our portfolio. And we are engaging in the sales process. We want to make certain we find the right long-term solution for the business that has a lot of employees, and we're engaging in that process. And we'll also appropriately communicate when the process is coming to an end.
Okay, and that I respect and I completely understand. But is Nike's decision to discontinue golf making it more difficult for you to find a buyer?
No, I don't think there's a correlation between the two. There's still a lot of interest around golf, and if you notice, we recently signed Tiger Woods with a business that is market share leader in many of its segments. So I don't believe that there's a correlation between the two.
Thank you for watching. In conclusion, marketing research and operations analytics, those definitely helped our companies strive to be the best companies out there.